Reproductive Rights Roadshow. So again, my name is Aisha. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm here on behalf of the ACLU of Colorado. And this is Katie.
I'm Katie, Katie Young, and I'm here with Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains. I'm an organizer in Durango.
And I also want to just give a shout out, one, to Delana, who is moderating for us today, especially during the Q&A portion of this webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to ask those in the Q&A chat area, and we will be answering those. And then I'd also like to give a shout out to the Colorado Reproductive Health Rights and Justice Coalition, who we do all of this work alongside. And then lastly, I want to note that later today we will be sending out this PowerPoint as well as some other additional information on how to stay connected with us and how to continue doing work with us regarding the abortion ballot. So today you'll leave with, one, a deeper understanding on abortion later in pregnancy, some details regarding the abortion ban that is on the November 2020 ballot, some tools that you can bring home and share with others to continue staying engaged, and again, some ways to stay engaged. We'll also be having a Q&A again at the end of this webinar where you'll be able to ask some questions that may arise throughout this webinar, so feel free to ask those during that portion.
So we thought we would kick this off by sharing a couple of recent court cases, as well as some cases coming down the line. Recently, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in the case June Medical Services v. Russo. You've probably heard about this. This was the first abortion case to reach the Supreme Court since the confirmation of conservative judges Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch, whose appointments changed the makeup of the court to one skewed anti-reproductive rights and anti-abortion. This would have required abortion providers in Louisiana to have hospital admission requirements, which is another way to restrict access and put more unnecessary barriers in place for abortion providers. And to bring this home locally a little bit, in Durango, the only hospital we have is a Catholic hospital, who likely wouldn't grant admission ability to our local providers, making it even harder for people in our area to receive care. In the case of Trump versus Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court issued their ruling upholding two Trump administration rules that allow employers and universities to deny their employees and students coverage for contraceptive care based on a religious or moral objection. Some other repro cases happening at the Supreme Court level is politicians continuing to do everything that they can do to take control of our bodies and our lives and our futures. The abortion ban on the ballot in 2020 is not just happening in Colorado, it's also happening in Louisiana. Politicians are still exploiting a pandemic to try to restrict access to reproductive care, and there are 16 other abortion cases one step away from reaching the Supreme Court. So while we may have received a really important victory with June Medical, we are not anticipating getting a victory for all of these other cases. That's why it's still imperative to protect access in these states, in all of the states, because we can't just rely on the Supreme Court.
I'd also like to recommend checking out the SCOTUS blog, which is not directly affiliated with the Supreme Court of the United States, but it is a great way to find out some more in-depth information and some coverage and interpretation of different Supreme Court rulings. You can find them on Twitter or as an app, and again, it's a great way to just kind of stay engaged with some different abortion-related Supreme Court cases. So what exactly is abortion later in pregnancy? First and foremost, abortion later in pregnancy is a political concept created by anti-abortion politicians and activists who want to end all abortion. Additionally, later abortion typically describes abortion during the second or third trimester. However, only about 1% of abortions in the entire United States are performed at or after these 21 weeks of gestation. Also, later abortion bans impose a one-size-fits-all restriction that does not account for the unique circumstances of each pregnancy. Quite frankly, they're arbitrary, medically unnecessary, and unconstitutional under Roe v. Wade. Another thing to note on these abortion bans is that they make it difficult for someone seeking an abortion to access care and navigate the financial and logistical barriers of pregnancy and abortion in a timely manner. Colorado does not currently restrict later abortion or what's considered a safe haven for later abortion care, which simply means people from states where they are unable to safely obtain a later abortion will come to Colorado to safely obtain one. Some other things to note is that reporters in the media often use the term late-term abortion, and we should try to educate them that this is a made-up anti-abortion term and that medically, pregnancies and abortions are discussed in trimesters, not terms. Another good option would be to refer to these types of abortions as abortion later in pregnancy. So again, what is Proposition 115 and who's behind it? Proposition 115 is, again, a ban on abortions after 22 weeks, which takes away the individual decision-making that should occur between the pregnant individual and their doctor. The efforts behind Proposition 115 are led by Due Date Too Late, which is a group of anti-abortion activists and politicians. The leaders of Due Date Too Late are also the same people who show up year after year in support of personhood abortion ban bills at the legislature. They're also the same people who've championed anti-LGBTQ+ bills this year, most notably the anti-trans youth bill that criminalized doctors who treated trans youth for gender dysphoria. They have consistently sought to criminalize doctors and to take away the freedom of individual decision-making in the state of Colorado. Also, later abortion bans are championed by anti-abortion politicians that have failed in the legislature in both 2018 and 2020. So we believe that this abortion ban, Proposition 115, is a response to these past failed personhood abortion bans, and they believe it's a necessary step, to banning all abortion in the state of Colorado. So how is reproductive freedom impacted by Proposition 115? Again, it bans all abortions after 22 weeks, which, as we've discussed, is an arbitrary point of gestation. There's no medical evidence that it is more dangerous to perform an abortion after these 22 weeks. There's also no exception for health, rape or incest, or fetal viability, which refers to whether or not a fetus will survive outside of the womb with any medical attention. And additionally, doctors face criminal charges and medical license suspension if they perform abortions at or after the 22-week gestation period.
Oops, I was on mute. Additionally, it's not based in medical facts. It hurts real people, and it takes away the freedom of personal decision-making about medical care. And one of the biggest points for me, I think, is that it destroys our safe haven. If a lot of later abortion patients that are receiving care here in Colorado are traveling from out of state.
So again, quite frankly, Proposition 115 is an attack on Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade and subsequent Supreme Court decisions have stated that before fetal viability, a state cannot ban any abortion under any circumstances, because this decision lies between the pregnant individual and their doctor. Also, after the point of fetal viability, any abortion must have an exception for the pregnant person's life and health, and it must be up to their medical provider to determine whether their health and life is in jeopardy. Proposition 115 also doesn't have any health exception and limits the life exception to if the individual is experiencing any physical or mental health barriers, but Proposition 115 does not allow any exceptions for physical or mental health issues. And lastly, again, there is no exception for rape or incest or fetal viability, again, if a fetus will survive outside of the womb with any medical attention. So now that we've learned some detailed information on Proposition 115, I'm going to pass it over to Katie to talk a bit more on how we all can talk about abortion later in pregnancy.
So we have some amazing patients over at, or partners over at Patient Forward, Erica Christensen and her husband Garen, who have an amazing story. They decided to start a family, and amazing as far as really, really powerful, right? So after suffering a miscarriage, they were happy to get pregnant again, but discovered at 30 weeks, their pregnancy was diagnosed with a rare condition that would prevent the fetus from surviving outside of the womb. They are incredibly powerful storytellers who share their experience in their own words. They had to travel from New York to Colorado and back again to receive abortion care in order to safeguard her health and prevent that unnecessary suffering. They are an incredible organization focused on seeing the power of patient narratives firsthand. And they began organizing these later abortion patients all across the country. In fact, in February of this year, Erica and Garen testified against the federal 22-week ban at the United States Senate Committee Judiciary. Please check them out. Patient Forward is an amazing organization with so much power and so many powerful resources around sharing your story. So basically, looking at the research, we see that there are two categories of why a person would seek abortion care later in pregnancy. There's new information, right, that changes the course of the pregnancy. So that could be that a pregnancy was discovered after the first trimester, that there was a fetal diagnosis, a negative fetal diagnosis, that there was a newly discovered threat to the health or life of the patient, or even a sudden life event. The other category to this is going to be pre-existing barriers to obtaining care as early as a person might want to have obtained that care. And that can look like abortion restrictions and burdensome regulations, difficulty paying, interaction even with a crisis pregnancy center, as well as childcare struggles and difficulty finding travel. We see that plenty of people fit into both of these categories and that they kind of feed into each other. Getting information later in your pregnancy can increase the difficulty to accessing abortion care. So as I mentioned earlier, Colorado is currently a safe haven state. No patient should have to travel across state lines to receive their health care. But unfortunately, that's what we're seeing. At Planned Parenthood, we say the health care you receive shouldn't depend on your zip code. Colorado is a place that patients can come to receive life-saving abortion care. And this ban would not only have those disparate impacts for, residents, our neighbors, our friends, our family members, but also patients all across the country who are relying on us. We've seen attempts to restrict this abortion care across the whole country. According to the Guttmacher Institute, 57% of women of reproductive age are now living in a state that's either hostile or very hostile to abortion rights. 57%. But here in Colorado, we're fortunate enough to serve as a safe haven region where patients come from across the country to receive the care they aren't able to receive in their home state. And just to give you a little bit of context about the number of out-of-state patients that Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains is seeing in Colorado. In February, we saw 16 patients from Texas, and in April, that number had increased over tenfold to 212. We see this especially at our Durango Health Center. Whenever Texas politicians were using COVID-19 as a cover to pass backdoor abortion bans, our out-of-state patients here in Durango skyrocketed. I was getting messages from our health center manager about all of these people who are booking and all these folks from Texas who were relying on us to receive their care. This is why it's so important to defeat Prop 115, to protect access to abortion care in our state and for our friends and family and neighbors all across the country. So next I want to talk about how to destigmatize your language. I want to make sure that all of you feel really empowered and really confident in talking about this, because I do acknowledge that it's kind of difficult to talk about. So I want to give you some really tangible tools to walk away with, to be able to have these conversations with your networks. So we do encourage you to share those possible circumstances, like I mentioned in the research, that might lead an individual to seek care later in a pregnancy, like those possible complications, trouble accessing abortion because of barriers or limitations. It's important to show people that you never know the circumstances of a person's life that might lead them to seeking abortion care later in pregnancy. I also want to encourage you to lead with your values and model and show compassion. As a person I'm an organizer for Planned Parenthood, right? And I found in my work that finding that common ground, sharing your values, and hearing out another person's values, you can always find a way to connect on that. We want to show support for people making the best decision for their health, their needs, their circumstances, their life, their freedom.
And again, as we continue to work to destigmatize our language, some things we recommend not doing in our language is please don't focus your examples on fetal diagnosis, rape, or incest, because again, we can't know what every situation looks like, and we can't assume how different situations are for each person. We also recommend not using words like tragic and awful, because we should be using somebody's abortion as a time to offer them empathy and support, and not as a time to shame them. And lastly, let's not repeat the opposition's framing. That's not helping anyone. So now that we've given some information, we've shared some different terminology to use, some more facts about Proposition 115 and abortion later in pregnancy, let's talk about some different ways to get involved. So the first one is attending this webinar today. Thank you again to everyone for joining ACLU of Colorado and Planned Parenthood. This is the first step in getting more involved concerning Proposition 115. Some other ways you can get involved with Prop 115 is to reach out to the Colorado Reproductive Health Rights and Justice Speakers Bureau through that bit.ly link. If you have any stories or you know of anyone who has a story related to abortion later in pregnancy, just reach out to us through there and we would love to hear some more from you. Additionally, you can text no bans to 33777 and get in touch with the ACLU of Colorado to hear about some more community activism that can be done and just ways to stay engaged with us post-webinar.
I also encourage you to follow the link here on this slide, bit.ly/getinvolvedpprm2020. You can get updates from us that way, and make sure that you're getting all the right information on where we're at with this abortion ban. You can also follow ACLU of Colorado and PPRM on our social media accounts. We'll be sharing information about this there as well as other ways to get involved, to make sure that you're in the know and in the loop. And also, like, now that you have some tools for destigmatizing your language, talk to your community about Prop 115. Talk to your friends. I know it feels really impossible and really difficult, but we're here to help you. We're here to guide you in those conversations. And it's so vital that we're building our network's confidence and empowering people to take charge of their lives.
And here are some additional resources to, again, continue getting involved with Prop 115. These first three from the Guttmacher Institute, Abortion Care Reality and Patient Forward, can offer all of you some more in-depth information about later abortion. You can also look at these articles from the Denver Post, Rewire News, and Sentinel, Colorado to get some more detailed information concerning Proposition 115 and the 22-week abortion ban. The ACLU of Colorado has also collected some different stories of people behind bars who are experiencing some troubles and just their stories regarding reproductive health. We also have Advocacy from Home at the ACLU of Colorado, which is linked here, and it just has more ways to advocate from home during all of this. And lastly, some more detailed information on different reproductive health care services for all of you in Colorado is the Women's Freedom Fund, Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains, and rhrjcolorado.org. And you don't have to write all of these links down. Again, we'll be sending out this PowerPoint later today. So this is our time for questions. Feel free to drop any questions that may have risen throughout this webinar in the chat area, and Elena will be letting us know what those questions are.
Great, thank you. That was wonderful. Okay, it says I'm muted. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So our first question, and again, as Aisha said, please put your questions into the chat. Are there going to be virtual options to fight this ban? I am a Nebraskan, but I know how important it is to the women in my state, in the whole region, to keep Colorado as a safe haven. And I will answer this a little bit, and then I'll turn it over to Katie. It looks like everything's going to be virtual. So I know Planned Parenthood and ACLU both do text banks and phone banks and those types of things that you can do from home. So definitely sign up with us. We'd love to have your help. And it is so great, Morgan, that you realize how important Colorado is. Katie, did you want to add?
Yeah. Thank you for that question, Morgan. And thank you for your care and attention to what's happening here with us. Like echoing what Delana said, the whole world is virtual right now, and we are anticipating having to get really creative with our field tactics and with our outreach methods because of COVID-19, which it's kind of a roses and thorns thing, right? Like, it's great to be able to have Morgan, you and your friends in Nebraska helping us out from afar. So we'll definitely keep you in the loop.
Great, thank you. And this one, I don't know if any of us can answer this. This is from an attendee who wants to know if Dr. Hearn will move to another state if this initiative passes. And that I can't answer. I don't know, Katie, Aisha, if you have any information on that.
Any information on that? We can't say what our providers would do if this passed. Yeah, just unsure on that. I can say that this initiative passing will have a lot of effects that we probably can't anticipate right now.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we'll give it a second for some more questions. Oh, we've got one. Could we get some info on the abortion cases that are in the pipeline to go to SCOTUS? Do you at Planned Parenthood have anything like on your website about which cases are going to SCOTUS, could go to SCOTUS? I've heard 16 maybe in the pipeline. Katie?
Sorry, I couldn't. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you
now. We can follow up in that follow-up email with a list of exactly what those cases are and some more in-depth information on that.
Great, great.
And as we wait on some last questions, here is our contact information and our websites if you have anything that you might want to refer to on there. But again, we will have a follow-up email with this PowerPoint and some more additional information.
And we do also put these presentations on our YouTube page and then link them at our Advocacy from Home page. And, you know, feel free, Planned Parenthood, to link to us too. We appreciate anything. So this is from Patty. What chance do you think Prop 115 has of passing?
Hi, Patty. I'm so glad you were able to make it. So as far as what chance it has of passing, listen, Colorado voters have rejected bans on abortion time and time again. And this is not going to be an easy fight. This is not something that we have in the bag. This is going to be an uphill battle. And we really, really need support. We really, really need activists to engage on this. We really do need some help on this one. I don't think there's any cause for alarm, but it is time to rally.
Absolutely. These things are often used as a way to get voters out. So, you know, we have to get our voters out, people who care about abortion rights. And the other thing I always like to point to is in November of 2016, chances of a certain person being elected president seemed very low, but here we are today. So never take anything for granted and do everything you can to make sure that you know, these things don't pass. And then Patty asked if we'll be sending the PowerPoint presentation out.
Yes.
And we will. And then this one says, since 20-week bans have held up in court, can we expect this initiative to hold up as well, should it be passed? And I am not a lawyer. Anybody want to try for that one?
I also don't want to like specify, but I feel like referring maybe consistently to that SCOTUS blog and kind of how they've interpreted past ban ballot or abortion ban ballots would be a good place to start, but I definitely can't give a for sure answer on that.
Yeah, and I think the court has changed so much over the last 4 years that even if you look at something and you know 100% it's unconstitutional, we just don't know how courts rule. So our best defense is, as they say in football, good offense, and making sure that this doesn't pass so we don't have to take it to court and find out.
Yeah, exactly. Just to echo that, Delina, you know, any attack on abortion is an attack on our right to reproductive freedom. And we're going to fight this no matter what. And we're just really prioritizing not letting it pass. But of course, we will follow up with whatever action is needed from there if it does.
Absolutely. We won't let it. But let's just not get to that kind of scenario. Yeah. And let's make sure it doesn't pass in the fall. And both Planned Parenthood and us will be doing a ton of work, as will our partners. So no matter how you're connected with us, you will be hearing about this, and we will be asking for your help. All right, we're giving it another second for questions. But otherwise, this has been great. And I always learn so much, and I have to say this is the 3rd time I've seen this presentation, and I still find something new and interesting every time. And every time I see it, it makes me more resolved to help make sure this doesn't pass. So we will be in touch with you all soon. PowerPoint, all the materials will be coming your way. But if there's no more questions, I guess we can let you all get back to lunch.
Thank you so much, everybody who attended today. We really, really appreciate this, taking some time to figure out what's going on. And we really want to bring you with us on this fight. And we really want you to bring your friends with you in this fight too. So don't be afraid to start having these conversations, talking to folks, educating others. And we also have a hashtag bans off Colorado if you want to make social media posts so that you can reach your networks that way.
Thank you again, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.